Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening or good morning if you're US located. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, super. I will wait 1 or 2 more minutes to start with the session. And can you see my screen as well? Yeah, super. So I propose to start with the session. So thanks everyone for joining the session. I hope you're all eager and considering applying for an MBB consultant, and that's the major reason you're here. And I hope that I can help and support you and give some clarity today. So today I will focus on four major topics. First, I will quickly introduce myself. Secondly, I'm gonna talk about the recruitment process and give you some tips and hints. Thirdly, we will do a short mock case. So it's a real case example that I'm using during the interview myself. And then lastly, I will keep some time for some questions from your side, if any. So about myself, I'm Mattijs B. I'm former consultant at Bain and Company, and I went through the recruitment process myself 4 years ago. Uh, I landed several offers myself, so for Bain, BCG, and also from Kearney. And during my time at Bain and Company, I was part of the recruitment team, so really screening CVs and cover letters myself, and also conducting the interviews for first and second rounds. And in the meantime, people were asking me to help them during the recruitment process as well. And since then, I've coached more than 150 people to apply for McKinsey, Bain, and BCG or other strategic consulting firms. So that was a short introduction about myself. And I now want to go to the interview process itself. So the interview process consists most of the time of 3 rounds, and in each round you do 2 to 3 interviews itself. And it's important that you master or cover 3 main buckets. The first one is the CV and the cover letter. I guess everyone has already drafted the CV. You also find a lot of CV examples on the internet, so this should be the most easy part, to be honest. What is important on the CV is that you clearly show that you do have something exceptional, that you do a lot of extracurricular activities, and that you are a real advantage for the MBB company. Then the cover letter, there you need to cover 3 main topics. Why do you want to work for the specific company? Why do you want to work at that certain office for a certain location? And why are you a good candidate? So you should answer all of those 3 questions in your cover letter, most of the time a one-pager, and you need to be very specific. Again, you can find sources on the Leland Plus platform. And I can also provide you with some examples if required. For the input of the cover letter, I highly recommend to attend events to connect with consultants and former consultants via LinkedIn to get some input on your questions, why you want to work at that firm, why is it special for you or for them. And to also check with peers or colleagues or students what are your main strengths and what are your points of improvement, and to try to include those into your cover letter. A second bucket then, if you pass the screening of the CV, you are invited for a first round of interviews. The interviews consist of two main parts. So you have the behavioral question part and you have the case interview itself. The behavioral questions are very similar to a normal interview, a non-consulting interview. So they may mainly ask, why do you want to work for the firm? What are your main strengths? What are your points of improvements? And they will also ask about specific skills, about, for example, leadership, showing that you're a team player, how you reacted in a situation where you got a failure, etc. And there, it's also important to answer in a very structured way. So try to think about examples before going to the interview. You first give a short introduction. If you need to answer one of those questions, you first need to give an example. You first give a short introduction of the situation for 20 seconds. Then you're stating what the problem was. And then you explain in clear steps what you did to handle the situation, to show leadership, to convince a group, depending on the situation. And as a last part, you include next steps or key learning lessons. This is also something that in coaching sessions we can handle, we can discuss, and we can further specify. And then the third bucket is the case interview itself. And that's also the most important one. And there again, I recommend 3 steps. A first step is that you read through books, to case interview books. Some examples are, for example, Case in Point, that is very common. You also have Case Interview Secrets. There's also a lot of material on Leland Plus as well, but that you try to get a sense of what it is to conduct an interview. That you know, for example, that an interview is always, it's always a prompt that is given. It's you that repeat the introduction, you ask clarification questions, you come up with a structure, and then via the structure, you try to solve the case. And at the end, you conclude the case. So these are all the main subjects you need to handle during the case. Once you get a sense of what an interview is, the main basic steps, that you know some couple of frameworks, it's important to start practicing with peers as well. So that can be friends you know from university, or, for example, people who are applying as well for the company. And then in the last step, I highly recommend to exercise and practice with coaches. And the main reason is that they can really stress you on the points of improvements or what is still short on how to succeed.
Je dis, dès qu'ils font quelque chose, ils veulent pas t'aider. Voilà. Ouais, c'est encore
It's possible to mute yourself because I have some background noise. Yeah, thanks a lot. Then next point, I want to give some top tips for the interview itself. So the first one is that you need 3 to 6 months of preparation before your first round. And that period starts from the beginning. You have your CV and cover letter. Why do you need that amount of time? Is it preparing for a case and doing the case interview? It's not a sprint, but it's a marathon. You need to master certain skills before you can succeed in an interview. Examples of skills you need to master are, for example, frameworking, top-down communication, quick mathematics, etc. And I recommend to practice on a weekly basis, couple of times, and do it in a frequent way. So it's better to practice, let's say, 3 to 4 hours on a weekly basis, than do nothing and then try to push yourself in one weekend. That's not very helpful, and that way you're not going to learn at all. So please have sufficient time to prepare for your first round of interviews. My second tip is apply also for consulting firms that are not your first preference. The reason is, in my opinion, twofold. First reason is because it's not your main preference, you're less stressed for the interview. And sometimes that can lead to better results. Secondly, see it as a test, but as a very good test, because then you know what it is to go to a certain office, to be exposed to unforeseen questions, etc., etc. So I highly recommend to apply for at least one or two other firms besides MBB if you only target, even if you only target MBB. And then thirdly, try to attend events. So all companies have online and offline events. Try to at least attend one. There it's a two-way street. So on the event itself, there will be consultants who are really, let's say, checking your behavior. They try to have a short list after the event with people they want to apply for the firm itself. So that's the goal of the company itself. Your goal needs to be sure that you want to work there. So be open to the consultants, ask questions that are bothering you, ask questions about their work, their lifestyle, etc., and really try to show interest in what they are doing. So these are my top three tips. Then the most important skills to master. I listed them because I know that it are very uncommon skills and skills that most of the people don't have before working at a consulting firm. The first skill is framework drafting. So I guess that most of the people know what a framework is, and you see a couple of frameworks in textbooks, always for specific cases. So for example, for a market entry case, private equity case, pricing strategy, etc. It's important to read through them in textbooks and to keep them in the back of your head. During a case, never copy paste a case directly. If an interviewer sees that you're just copy pasting a framework, you will never pass to a second round. So it's really up to you to train a lot. I would recommend to do up to 30, 40, 50 cases before the first interview. It's really a skill that you need to develop to draft frameworks yourself and also to make them adaptable to the case itself. Because most people fail to adapt the framework to the specific case because they're only copying frameworks from textbooks. A very important metric there is the MECE-ness. So MECE stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. What does it mean? It simply means that you're covering everything in your framework, but don't have overlap. So as an example, if you need to split the inhabitants of a certain region in age group, a MECE framework is split between year 0 and year 40, and everyone older than 40. An example of a framework that is not mutually exclusive is, for example, when you split buckets between 0 and 40, and then people between 30 and older, then you do have overlap there. An example, for example, of being not collectively exclusive is when you draft your framework between people, the first bucket is between 0 and 30, and the other bucket is 50 plus, because then you're missing the people between 30 and 50. So that is the first skill you need to master, the frameworking. Then the second skill you need to master is top-down communication. This is a skill you require during the entire or during a lot of questions that need to be answered during the interview. Excuse me, but there is someone keep making noise. Is it possible to put your mic off, please? Yeah, okay. So the second skill you need to master is the top-down communication. You need to master this skill, and it's required during answering behavioral questions, during explaining of your framework, during the end conclusion. For example, for the end conclusion of a case, let me give an example. What most people do, and it's a very common mistake, is saying, the question of the client was to investigate if we need to acquire that company, and we investigated this, and also we investigated this a bit, and it shows a bit of profit of X million, so we need to do it. That's most of the time who people do it. No, that's wrong. Top down means you're saying, I advise the client to acquire that company for 3 reasons. First reason is because it's a big market of X million. Secondly, the market is even growing. Thirdly, the company is well positioned for reason X, Y, and Z. So that's top-down communication. Say directly the result and then try to support your result with facts. Don't say what you're doing. And then thirdly, it's the third skill you need to master is quick math. In an interview, I would say that there is not really room for mathematic errors. So there I recommend, if you don't have an engineering or mathematical background, you're not that strong in mathematics, try to practice 5 minutes on a daily basis. And it's just easy summations, easy multiplications. And please don't make mistakes on the zeros, because that's what's happening a lot. So always include your units into your calculations. So in my opinion, these are the 3 most important skills. And if you master them, your probability of success will increase a lot. And then I'm coming already to the example. So this is an example. Most of the time it's integrated in a private equity case that I'm giving in first and sometimes second rounds. And I want to show you what developing a framework is. That's one. And also what top-down communication is. So here it's a market sizing exercise. And I want you to estimate the size of the vodka market within Russia. So what you need to do, try to take a pen and paper, and I would recommend to do the exercise for you. So try to draft a framework, and the goal is not to have a correct answer. The goal is to have a detailed and structural approach. So try to take, let's say, 1 to 2 minutes now, and then I will give you an example and the solution. By the way, in the meantime, if you already have some questions, you can put them in the chat so I can handle them after the case example. So did everyone had the time to come up with an approach? Is there someone who would like to present his or her approach?
I could present my approach. I don't think it's the right one, but happy to throw it out there and get some critique.
Okay, please go on.
Sure. So I wanted to start with the total Russian population, which, if I recall correctly, I think it's about 150 million people. I know that
I
Russia.
can also present my approach without the exact numbers and just give a high-level overview of my strategy, if that's helpful.
Let's first go to the other person, and then you can give your approach as well, and then we will comment on both, if okay for you.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Sounds good.
I didn't finish my math, so I'm not going to go through the specific numbers. So I'll try to be quick. Anyway, about 150 million people. Then I want to know about how many are adult. It's an older country, so I estimate about 3/4 of them are adult. I made the supposition that men and women maybe drink at different proportions of the population. So I thought maybe 3/4 of men, 1/2 of women can be classed as regular drinkers. And then from there, I estimated that a drinker would have about 1 bottle every 2 weeks. It is hard liquor. And then I estimated that slightly down, and I would ask to bring this down to about 25 bottles per drinker per year. And then from there, I can get the domestic demand. And I would acknowledge that this leaves out the considerable export market that Russia likely has for vodka. And I would increase that by about 25% as an estimate to compensate at the end.
Okay, clear. Thanks. Maybe you, Alice? Sorry, but I cannot see all the names, so I guess it was Alice that wants to present as well, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Please go ahead, try to explain your solution and approach.
Yeah, so I can go ahead. So in order to figure out the size of the Russian vodka market, I took a top-down approach. Specifically, I'll start with the population of Russia, which I rounded to 144 million. And then I'm going to try and figure out the percentage of how many drink vodka and assign, and I'll sense check it using the reality benchmark of the US in order to give me an estimate of the Russia vodka market, because I'm not familiar with Russia, so I'll compare it with the US. And specifically, I would say for the US, around 60 to 70% of people drink. And I know drinking culture is very big in Russia. And then I know vodka is the primary alcoholic consumption beverage there. So I'll amp that up to 80% of the Russian population that drinks. So we can take our population of Russia, 144 million, times that by the 80% of people who drink, and that'll give us 105.2 million for the overall population of the Russian vodka market. And then I'm going to add another layer into it. So second of all, I'm going to estimate the frequency of drinkers. And specifically, I segmented that into 3 different verticals. Number 1 is the low consumption of vodka. And number 2 is medium frequency consumption of vodka. And number 3 is high frequency drinkers of vodka who might be alcoholic. And specifically, I define each of these buckets, starting with a low one. Low frequency drinkers will only drink a few times per year. Medium frequency drinkers, number 2, will drink a few times per week. And high frequency drinkers, the third bucket, will drink several times per day. And now I'll assign percentages to each of these as well. Specifically, I think the vast majority of people who have some kind of exposure to alcohol will be around 80%. And then so I'll assign that 80% to the low frequency drinkers. And then for medium frequency drinkers who drink a few times per week, I think a lot of people will, especially people who work corporate or in consulting, for example, they go out and drink a lot. So I'll say that around 40% of people drink a few times per week. Just checking in here, do you think this is a realistic ballpark that I'm assigning for percentages, or is it too high or low and I need to make an adjustment?
No, it's okay for now. You can proceed.
Okay, awesome. So medium frequency drinkers, let's say that's 40%. And for high frequency drinkers, I think this is who drink several times per day. I think this is people who are addicted to alcohol or suffer from alcoholism. And I'd say that's around maybe 10% of the population. And I know in Russia, drinking it culture is very big there. So 10% might seem a bit big in the US, but for Russia, I'm just going to apply my assumption there that there are a greater number of people who are more likely to have alcohol dependency. So now that I have these percentages for each of the three verticals, I'm going to multiply that by the 115.2 million that we derived previously. So I'll go ahead and do that approach now. So for our low frequency bucket, that's 80% times 115.2 million, and that'll give us around 52.2 million. For moving on to our second medium frequency bucket, 40% times 115.2 million will give us 46 million. And finally, our high frequency bucket, 10% times the 15.2 million will give us around 12 million. So right now, the numbers that I have in front of me are 92.2 million for low frequency drinkers, 46 million for medium frequency drinkers, and 12 million for high frequency drinkers. And the third step I'm going to take is add the sum of all of these numbers. And I'm assuming that will be somewhere in the mid billions. And let me just go ahead and add everything really quickly. So right now, for population-wise, the number-wise, I'm getting there's around 265 million. And then this semi-last step I'm going to take is going to assign the dollar value of each bottle of vodka that it costs in Russia. I'm not sure what the Russian currency is. Is it okay if I use a US dollar in this case?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, great. And can I assume that one bottle of vodka is around $20 in Russia?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, great. So I'm going to take $20 that we have per vodka bottle times 265 million. So that'll give us $5.3 billion in revenue for the Russia vodka market. And then just sense checking, I think this is a reasonable amount. It seems a little bit low to me, but this is what I have for the Russia vodka market. I would assume it's reality checking. I think it's higher. So yeah, just checking in with you. Do you have any suggestions for me here?
Okay, clear. So thanks both for your approach. In my opinion, it was generally okay, although I have some, let's say, comments or points of improvements. At the first question that you always need to ask, is it the market sizing in volume or is it in value? So that's for both of you relevant. So the first candidate did only do the calculation volume, but actually it was required in value. The last candidate calculated in value, but only at the end. So if you know that you want to calculate the market size in a value terms, then say at the start, look, I'm going to first estimate the volume and then multiply it with an estimation of the average price. And then start to lay down your framework of the volume. That's what I mean with top-down communication. So don't first dig deeper in the volume bucket and then at the whole end say, but I have a price as well. Don't do that. A second remark is that try to round your numbers a bit more. For example, the second candidate gave like the number of inhabitants of Russia of what was it, 144 or something, but that's too specific. You can round to, for example, 150. That makes the math way easier and then makes that you don't make or are less prone to make mistakes. What I've seen as well and what I liked is next steps. So that's a skill you need to develop and a habit you need to develop. If you calculate the number, try to sense check your number and try to say, look, what does it mean for the outcome of the case or the outcome of the prompt? Is it now a high market? Is it a big market? Is it a small market? And does it make sense as well? So indeed, it's a habit that you need to develop to sense check. And then a last remark is don't forget the units. For example, in the last case, we were talking about millions, but are we talking about million liters, million bottles? If it are bottles, what's the size of the bottle, etc. So please don't forget your units. It can be very important in making or breaking the case. I'm now going to show you the potential example. So here you can clearly see if you want to calculate the market size split between volume and price first, then you can go deeper in the volume. Here I just made my own suggestion, like to calculate the number of person, you can multiply the inhabitants with the percentage of eligible drinking, so that they are, for example, above 20, multiplying with people who drink vodka. Here, I don't make the differentiation between people that are frequently drinking and not. You can do that, of course, up to you. And for the price, I differentiated between, let's say, regular vodka and premium vodka. Again, that's a choice as well. So there is no one perfect solution. It's all how you explain it, how you can back it up with information you can provide, and how you can sense check with the interviewer. And then I put some numbers on it, and I come to a final number of $7.5 billion. Again, the end result is not that important. It's more your approach. So I'm coming here almost at the end. I'm checking if there are some hot burning questions. I don't see some questions in the chat. So is there anyone? Let me check.
Hi, I had a question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Since regarding this approach about, estimating things in the Russian market about the alcohol consumption, this is still something a lot of the people I assume would be aware of. Could you provide, further explanation for how we would go about looking at a case when we have very little to absolutely no understanding of the market or the given scenario? How would you approach it? Do we jump at it straight head on, straight at the direct values or the direct thing that's being asked? Or do we loop around and try to identify what the client's asking for?
Yeah, indeed. The most important part of solving a case is understanding the question. And that's where I see most failure of candidates. They try to answer a question, but they don't understand the question at first. So what you can do then is ask clarification questions. If the interviewer gives you more information or more explanation, you can use it. If the interviewer is saying after 2 to 3 times, please go ahead or come up with an approach, then it's up to you to come up with an approach. First, then develop your approach, and then secondly, try to estimate or put numbers on it.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Okay. I see that there is another question via the chat, and it's regarding would the difficulty of case gets harder as we go to the final round. A clear answer there is yes. So this example I gave is given in first and second rounds. The difference between the first, second, and third round is twofold. One, the case can be more difficult in last rounds, and secondly, the case is way less clear. So in the first round, you can expect to get a case with a clear request, for example, a market entry or an M&A deal. Do we need to do the deal or not? In the final round, the interviewer is the partner, and it can happen that it's more like a talk, I would say, but there it's still important to show your habits in terms of developing your framework, in terms of top-down communication, etc. But they won't give the time anymore to you. So it's very important that you master those skills already and you don't fall in the trap of starting a funny conversation, because at the end, it will not lead to a good end result. Then another question is, how complicated should we make our mathematical frameworks? That's all up to you, of course, but try to see the main driver of an estimation. In my opinion, here so you have the volume and price driver. These are the two important ones. And volume related, of course, is related to the number of inhabitants and to the number who drink vodka. For me, that's sufficient. You don't need to go deeper. So here you see 4 levels, I would say, but that's really the maximum. So don't make it too complicated. If you think you require a deeper level, just ask the interviewer. So you can always sense check your approach. And when you elaborate your approach, you can say, is it okay that I use this as an estimation, or should I go deeper? And most of the time, they will see that you thought about it, and they will say that you can go ahead. Then what are the most common type of cases that Bain tends to ask? So Bain is very famous for their private equity, and they will ask a lot of private equity cases. And most of the time, the framework there is very straightforward and easy. You check if it's a good market, a big market, and a growing market. And the second question is then, is the company having a competitive advantage? And it can be meaning that they have a cost advantage, that they have better distribution channels, better sales contracts, etc. But Bain is asking a lot of giving a lot of private equity cases. For BCG, there is not really a certain industry that they are very focusing on during the interview. And then for McKinsey, I know that they are giving a lot of NGO and public cases, so more governmental cases. Then the next question from Taylor. Should you state your assumptions? I noticed that valuation of Russia was analyzed, but we did not consider where Russian vodka is exported. Russia does in fact export a lot of vodka. Should this be mentioned? Yes. If it's a core assumption, please mention it. If it's a very small one, you don't need to mention it. But indeed, if it's a core assumption, please mention it when you're talking. It also shows that you have thought about your estimation, about your approach. So it shows that you're skilled in a certain way. Okay. I see. Alice, do you still have a question?
Yeah, I do, but if other people have it, they can go before me.
You can raise your hand if you still have questions, or put them in the chat. So please go ahead, Alice. You can ask it orally as well, so no need to put them all in into the chat.
Okay, great. I was wondering, do you have any suggestions for getting interviews with these companies? So, for example, I previously interviewed with MBBs except for BCG, and even though I attended BCG summer twice, they didn't give me an interview. And I'm wondering how important is the weight of referrals, because I'm trying to re-recruit and apply for MBBs again, and I had a referral for McKinsey, but I got my rejection letter today. So do you have any advice for experienced hires in re-recruiting and actually getting the interview?
Yeah, I do. Getting a referral is very important. So how the system works is that the CVs and cover letters are shared within a small team, people that are part of the recruitment team. And what they do is they give you a score. And what we did is saying, look, I want that person to get the interview, or I want to decline that CV. If there is doubt, of course, there is always a short discussion of 5 minutes. But if you get a referral or if you know the people, it's more high likely that they give you the interview. So that's one element. A second element is, of course, like the quality of your CV and cover letter. If the quality and of the CV and cover letter is exceptional, for sure you'll get the interview. The opposite is also true. If the quality is really lacking, then it's highly unlikely that you will get the interview. And then a third element is, of course, let's say the consulting market as well. So all the companies and offices do have targets of many people that they want to hire. And if you're a bit unlucky and the market is a bit down, then it could be that they reject candidates more quickly.
I see. Thank you. That's very helpful. Is it possible, let's say that you had an interaction with a more senior leader and the interaction didn't go well, is it possible for them to block you as well from the system?
No, not really, to be honest. It's always a positive recommendation, not a negative one. But of course, it doesn't hurt you that much, but it doesn't help either.
Okay, so it's not possible to block candidates.
No. The only thing that I am aware of, at least that's for the European office, is if you apply and you are rejected, that you need to wait 1 year before you can reapply.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. I still see a question of Thomas in the chat. So how many clarification questions are too many? I recommend to ask up to 3 clarification questions, but that's really the max. If the question is not relevant, don't ask, because that's something I've seen as well, that people are tending to ask a lot of clarification questions, but the answer is not helping them to get the framework or proceed with the case.
Could you give us a sample of a good cover letter and a CV? A verbal sample would be just fine.
You can find them on Leland Plus, and I can give you one example, but please reach out via chat personally then. Are there other questions? So I'm seeing we are coming at the end of the session. So first of all, I would like to thank you all for being present here. I'm wishing you a lot of good luck. And I am a coach with a lot of experience, a good network as well. So I'm always happy to help. And for this session, I would like to provide everyone with the coupon code. So my coupon code is Mattijs and then Mark B, Mark 10. That you can use if you're interested in having coaching sessions. If you require more information, don't hesitate to ask here via chat or reach out to me, and then we can plan a further introduction session free of charge if necessary.